ko puhanga tohara te maunga, ko panaka tere te awa, ko ngā toki mata whaoro te waka, ko o karihi te marae, ko Ngāti ue one te hapu, ko ngā puhi te iwi, ko Freda Evans tōku ingoa. I was diagnosed with acid maltase glucogen deficiency, more commonly known now as Pompe disease, 31 years ago. At the time I was the first in New Zealand and the only one in New Zealand, and probably one of the very few in the world with the adult onset Pompe. Pompe is a terminal illness. Back then when I was diagnosed, they basically said to my mother and my father to take me home and enjoy life. You probably won't see 40. So when I turned 40, I had this massive party and said, yes, I've done it. I'm here. And then and it's just been from there on a struggle, but it's also been a fight for me to advocate, to keep advocating for Pompe, to get the drug that won't cure us, but will give us a better quality of life. There is a drug available. We've been, over the last 15 years, fighting for that. So I've sat at every government table. I've sat at every House Select Committee table. I've sat at Pharmac table. I've had 5 applications to Pharmac, and 5 applications were declined. And trust me, nobody knows pain like I know pain. It affects my walking. I can't walk long distances unaided. I can't walk upstairs unaided. I can't get in and out of cars unaided. I now have someone that comes and showers me every morning. I have to have support on my bed. I now have a recliner bed which enables me to get in and out of my bed without any problems.
So my name's Brendan McKellar. I'm a 56-year-old Aucklander. I was diagnosed in 2015, March, with something called multiple myeloma. With myeloma, although it's not curable, it's treatable. So the prognosis at the time was anything from 3 to 7 years, but it's very subjective. Very much depends on the age of the patient and general health, etc., how your organs are affected. It's mostly for older people, 65 plus, who are affected. I was 51 at the time. When I was diagnosed, I started chemotherapy, initial course of chemotherapy, and then I was lucky enough to have a stem cell transplant. And that's done here in Auckland Hospital at the specialist transplant ward. That was September 2015. Post-transplant, I got onto a drug called lenalidomide, which is something that's available in New Zealand, but only at relapse in terms of it being funded. My wife and I attended a lecture with a visiting French professor, and he suggested trying this drug as what they call a maintenance therapy. So that would be to delay the time between your remission, which I'm now in, and relapse. So we decided to go down that path. We were actually able to access the drug ourselves, importing it from India, which I'm still doing almost 3 years later. So at the time, we were led to understand that the monthly cost in New Zealand would be around $8,000, which of course is pretty prohibitive for most people, and importing from India is less than 5% of that. So we're paying around about $800 for 3 months supply, which is the maximum that you can get at any one time. So that's working well. Excuse me, in terms of the importation, and we hope also obviously that it's doing its job medically. That remains to be seen, because longitudinal studies on the efficacy of the drug are still coming through. Internationally, actually, that data is coming through now that the particular drug is very effective. At the time when I went on the drug, it was unusual to do that in this country. In terms of funding, as I say, it's funded at relapse, but for those patients who want to access the drug prior to that, it would certainly be very beneficial if Pharmac would be able to do that.
Hi, so my name's Kristen DeMonchi, and I'm here on behalf of my son Luke DeMonchi, who's 10 years old, and Luke has anaphylactic food allergies to dairy and egg. He has a life-threatening allergy, so anaphylaxis, so as opposed to other allergies where you might just get a rash, even feel a little bit sick in your stomach, with Luke it's anaphylaxis, so even the tiniest trace amounts of dairy. He will normally start with spitting, so it's almost like you've turned a tap on, and he'll start to just have to spit all the phlegm out, blowing his nose. Then often he will vomit as well, so his stomach is involved at that stage. Then he'll get welts on his skin, and they will slowly start to spread. So this is all happening within 5, 10, 15 minutes. And then if the cough starts, it means that his lungs are infected, and then it really can go quite quickly. So he'll have swelling of his lip, so his throat starts to constrict, coughing, wheezing, and all of those things together, at which stage it's really getting quite life-threatening, and he needs to have adrenaline, needs to have an EpiPen. So he had a bad reaction in January this year, so that was to trace amounts of dairy in a vegan chocolate, which had no warnings on the label whatsoever. There were product recalls all throughout the country after this, but he had trace amounts of dairy. They ended up testing it. There were 10 parts per million of dairy in that chocolate. So that happened, similar reaction that he had, the spitting, vomiting, coughing and wheezing within 15 minutes, so I administered the EpiPen. So he knows immediately, and we really have to get onto it quickly. I also needed to give him an inhaler to keep his airways open. He was given antihistamine as well. Called the ambulance came, went to hospital, and when he was there he still wasn't coming right, so his blood pressure was quite low, so he needed a second dose of adrenaline. As a result, we now have to have 2 EpiPens on us at any one time, so we actually have 4 EpiPens, so 2 are kept at school. He has a teacher assistant who walks around with him at lunch breaks, or keeps an eye on him during breaks at school. So 2 EpiPens at school and 2 at home, so we need 4 at any one time. The cheapest I've found is $125, so that's a pharmacy in central Auckland. My local pharmacy will sell them for about $160, so there's quite a bit of disparity in pricing. We once had an issue where he had an anaphylactic in the afternoon or evening, so went to hospital. We needed to get another EpiPen before we could take him home that night, because every time he eats there has to be an EpiPen available, and we had to pay $250 to get one from the after hours pharmacy in Auckland. So there are some people making more money on these than others. They expire every 12 months, so we have to have them. We need 4 now, so it's $600 worth essentially, or not quite, $500 worth that we have to spend at least every year, and then obviously more if we're using them more frequently. If he does not have that EpiPen, he will die. That is the reality. And he lives with that too, which is quite a challenge. I definitely know of university students, for example. I think that's a real risk group. They kind of, in those teenage years, early 20s, and maybe feeling a little bit bomb-proof, and think they don't need to worry about it, even though they know they have those those severe allergies, to have to spend that much money and have one all the time just in case you might need it. I definitely know of university students who don't have an EpiPen on them even though they know they have life-threatening allergies. So they just basically try to avoid those foods and just run the risk that they won't have anything, and then hopefully are able to get to a hospital in time. So it is a real issue. It's a life-threatening allergy. This is not a kind of nice to have. I appreciate it's a difficult decision for Pharmac, but it's life-threatening if he does not have adrenaline, and he needs it within 20 minutes, and it needs to be delivered in the right way. If that doesn't happen, he will die. That's the reality of it. So yes, I definitely think it should be funded through Pharmac.